Good afternoon, and welcome to another courageous episode of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. Now here's your corrosive and corpulent host, Voice of Doom. Hello. Wrap up yesterday with a recap of a verse. But you have waxed fat and kicked, thou art waxen fat, thou art grown thick, thou art covered with fatness. That's from Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 15. And I'm thinking of waxing fat, and I'm thinking about the American experiment. And I'm thinking about courage, and we don't have any. We aren't going to give up one bit of our fatness to help anybody. Not personally, no. Because we want our lifestyle, and we want things to be good, and we want to be exempt from the bloodshed and the mayhem and the death and the destruction. That's for other countries, not for America. We want to wax fat and grow thick-skinned. We don't have any feeling for anybody but ourselves. And you can talk all you want, but we don't. Now, I saw Courage on the YouTube channel today. And not courage like you'll ever see in this country. Talking about two people that are very likely to be imprisoned in a few days. And they were on Neil's show on the Fox Business. And they were two young Russians. And they were in their 20s. And if you look at them, they look like a couple of people you might see in Manhattan or LA. I always think all the Russians are all white and pale, but these two look pretty much like normal American type people. One girl was red-haired and pale, and the boyfriend looked ethnic. He looked like a South Pacific Islander or something. So, Russia is not totally homogenous. There's all kinds of people there. Now, these two people, and I will give their names because nobody's listening to this, and they already said what their names were. Polina Olenikova and Arshak Makichan. And they are protesters, and they've been protesting for a while now, and they told us what it's like to protest in Russia. And it's very interesting because up until 2 years ago when the pandemic hit, you could only protest in Russia if you did it all by yourself. A single picket. So that way you look like some nut wandering around saying the world's coming to an end. So you weren't allowed to assemble more than one person to protest. And that ended during the pandemic. They decided, no, we're not going to have any protests of any kind by anybody. And this Arshak guy was saying that in this day and age, if you protest, there's a good chance that not only you, but your family could be destroyed. The very least of which would be you lose your job, you lose your education, you get thrown out of college, you are blackballed and ostracized, and you lose all hope of having a future along with your family. Or on the more extreme side, you're put in prison for an indefinite period of time. And these two people were talking that they were going to keep on protesting and letting people of Russia know that Russia's an aggressor, and they're causing a lot of destruction because the Russian government controls the media, just like our media is controlled to a certain extent by governmental forces. But this media is telling everybody, and they've been telling all the Russians for many years now, that there's a good reason for why they're doing what they're doing. Just the same way Schicklgruber did it. They said that there's people in Ukraine that are being abused. They said there's people in Ukraine that are neo-Nazis. They said there's people in Ukraine that want to be part of Russia and they're not being allowed to be. And they're being vilified, reviled, and attacked. And so that's a good pretext for them to go and rescue them. And they don't say anything about the destruction. So there's plenty of items in the news about how many Russian people just don't believe what's happening because they've been told differently. So it would almost be like the Matrix if suddenly we realize that everything we have been told in the media and everything we've thought we knew about our culture and our country is all wrong, and we actually live in a test tube, Now, America protests, and some may be arrested for burning a police car and let go the next day, but most get away with it. Depends on what side you're on when you're protesting. Now, if you're an Antifa or BLM, then you can pretty much burn down buildings and kill anyone you want to and not suffer much harm. If you are a trucker or if you are a person who is protesting the results of the election or something of that nature, you will be jailed without a trial. You will be put away, and your movement will be used as a straw man for others to say, look what will happen if these people come into power. You see how bad they are? America is very weak. We're very arrogant, and we think that we will always be exempt because we live by the very great ideals which were the foundation of this country. Now, maybe individually in our communities, we do try to live up to those ideals. But as a rule, in a general sense, no, America has not lived up to those rules. We've exacerbated war at every opportunity. And that's obvious. And if you don't think there's going to be karmic retribution for that, then you're wrong. You're very, very wrong. So I wanted to pay homage to these two people because they got a lot of guts. Now, I don't know where they were. They were talking on some sort of a Zoom call with Neil, and they were saying they were going to continue to protest, so I will assume they were in Russia. Now, they're saying that their infrastructure in their digital cyberspace is being torn down and taken away so people can't get any kind of information. So how they're able to do that communication, I don't know. But I got to give them a lot of credit that they would do a segment on the Fox News to say how things are, knowing full well that the door could be broken down at any moment and they could be dragged away. And who knows what would become of them. But we don't have that here in America. We have people protesting for the right to kill their own kids. I can't see anything good coming of that on an existential level. You can talk about rights all you want. It's just no good. Find yourself out in the street protesting and screaming and chanting to be able to be allowed to kill your kids. That just seems wrong on its face. So I will leave it there. There's more, what do you call it? Whatever. Contrasts between American protests and what they're doing in Russia. If you see the footage, there's old ladies and stuff being dragged away. It reminds me very much of those footage from 1939 Germany when they were dragging old ladies by their hair to the concentration camps. So nothing good is happening right now. And I will tell you what bad things will happen in the next 4 minutes of my screed. I always like to make a prediction. I'm not going to put it on any one date. I'll just say by the end of March, many possibilities could happen that will cause people to have a cow. First possibility is that somehow Russia does something to cause things to go too far, and somehow NATO is embroiled in a regional conflict with Russia, which they hope will just remain regional, and hope that it will be more or less just artillery, and not anything larger. But I did hear they're using cluster bombs and hyperbolic bombs. Cluster bombs split apart into like 20 little bombs and just decimate an area. The hyperbolic or hyperbaric bombs explode, and then another explosion comes and just sucks all the air out of everything. We call it a vacuum bomb. Both supposedly illegal by the Geneva Convention, but being used. So it'll escalate, and so we'll have some sort of international embroilment into this conflict, which will escalate. Then now another possibility is a major city in the U.S. will be atomized. And I think that's a distinct possibility that will happen before the end of March, because I think that the whole thing with the looting and the who gives a shit about crime anymore is all part of a kind of a realization that this city is going to go up in smoke anyway. So if it gets looted, it really doesn't matter. All of it's going to be incinerated. So that could happen. Another thing that could happen is another variant comes through and really gets people pissed. Another possibility is that a protest could get out of hand and cause internecine strife. I think the truckers are in Maryland, and they're I think they're coming into the D.C. area today. And I think they're going to be reasonably unobtrusive for being 10,000 trucks. Try to keep a low profile, because they know that if any kind of ruckus happens, it'll be used as fodder for the other side to say that they're barbarians. So that probably won't turn into a big thing. Now, gas prices, they're not going to stop buying gas from Russia because Petri Dish wants to keep America from sacrificing anything. He does not want one American to sacrifice one thing. The only people he wants to sacrifice are the people that enlist in the armed services, that strap on a gun and get sent over somewhere to be blown up. So he doesn't mind that, but he doesn't want the American people to have to sacrifice. If it goes up above $3.95 a gallon for gas, Americans are really going to suffer. They're really, really going to suffer. They're going to suffer worse than the families in Ukraine, in Kharkiv, in Mariupol. They're going to suffer just as bad when they have to pay $5.50 a gallon for gas. So I think I've been sarcastic enough. Either a nuclear attack on the United States, huge expansion of the conflict in Europe, another variant comes through, and then you can pair that off with all the other disasters, the fentanyl and the human trafficking, and sooner or later a terrorist is going to take the opportunity to do something too, so there could be your terrorist activity here and there. So I'll leave it at that. I didn't say a whole hell of a lot. I wanted to pay tribute to these two because they're very brave, much braver than any citizen of America could ever be. And we'll have to be brave soon when we are scrambling, scurrying and scampering around looking for food. So we'll look forward to those days. It should be April or May. And have a good afternoon and enjoy the day.